I have hope." She answered her guest's polite question. Then she waited for the question she knew they really wanted to ask. She lived near Bethlehem. This was before the so-called Jewish War, when the Romans demolished Jerusalem. It was a time when many still lived who had seen Jesus Christ with their own eyes and heard him with their own ears. Her doleful relationship to the story of the Messiah's ministry and death gave her a special place among the faithful and among the merely curious. It was why so many strangers hollered into the dark interior of her house, asking if they had found the right place. Not knowing at first what kind of seekers they were, how could she turn them away? So she invited this small group of 2 men and a woman to join her around a rough-hewn table. They sat on stools in a simple garden enclosed by 5 small houses. The downsliding sun blasted heat at the garden, but citrus trees shaded the table and the visitors. White blossoms filled the air with a fresh, sweet scent that attracted insects whose humming wings were the chorus to the conversation in the garden. She had sent her daughter-in-law to the market to buy bread for their guests. The question came. "No, I don't mind remembering that for you, but before I start, will one of you kindly go to the well and fill this pitcher? You saw the well outside, a few steps up the street? If I don't sip while I speak, then at my age my throat gets dry and my voice rasps." She stretched her hand toward the clay pitcher on the table. She overreached, striking it. The pitcher wobbled noisily. She had known exactly where the pitcher was, but she pretended not to. This ritual drew attention to her blindness for the sake of less observant visitors. It encouraged some, out of pity, to reciprocate her hospitality with a small gift. When the pitcher came back and unglazed cups were filled all around, she told her tale. She said, "Why shouldn't I start at the beginning? My husband grew up in a big town on the Aegean coast. His father was a municipal officer. His parents were modestly prosperous. In that way, they were lucky. But after many years of marriage, they had no children. One day his father said to his mother, 'Why should we go on this way? My middle cousin has 3 boys. Shouldn't we adopt his youngest boy to raise as our own?' Mother-in-law had a different idea. She had talked to friends and relatives, and she had gleaned information. Now she made a proposal to her husband, but she set her hook by seeming to agree with him. The elderly woman paused her narrative. Horsemen rumbled past on the street outside her house. Then she continued. Mother-in-law said, 'Of course. But before we do that, shouldn't we go to an oracle? Shouldn't we find out if I will produce a son? Isn't that what people do here? Don't they go to an oracle in the hills above this town? Why should we raise someone else's child only later to have one between ourselves? What do we lose by going to the seer before we give up on that?' Her husband peered at her. 'Coin! Seers take money. They want loads of money. That is, if you hope for a favorable prophecy.' He snorted. 'Oracles! How do they see each other in the street and not break out laughing?' He only half believed what he himself said. But mother-in-law was patient and persistent. In a short time her gentle insistence wore down his stubborn resistance. They sought out the seer of renown in the hills above where they lived. Father-in-law insisted that for the climb they wear old clothes that looked well used. Mother-in-law climbed eagerly. Her husband climbed grudgingly. Behind them the sea glistened in the morning sun. The sun rose and the day turned sultry. Sweat trickled down their backs. In mid-morning, among a small grove of myrtle trees, they spotted the man they were looking for, wizened and sun-darkened. The seer sat cross-legged in front of a lean-to. He wore a loincloth. His hair and beard were white and in disarray. His white donkey stood between him and a stream that dawdled nearby. The donkey was tethered to a scraggly bush from which it was stripping the last leaves with its teeth. A stick leaned against the bush. The seer quickly made eye contact as they approached. Father-in-law came up and stood in front of him. Mother-in-law came up to stand next to her husband. The sitting man remained seated. Father-in-law said, "Honored sir, we know that you are a seer. We have come in hope that you will summon your talent. Please, sir, tell us what lies ahead." The seer gazed up at them. "We want to know if my wife will bear a son to carry on the family name." The seer did not speak or move. Mother-in-law tugged on her husband's sleeve. He looked at her. She pointed to his soft leather purse, which hung hidden under his light cloak, tied to a linen belt. He wished that he had remembered to wear a coarser belt and to have carried a plain cloth purse. Father-in-law took up his purse and emptied a few silver coins into his hand. He held them out to the seer. The seer stayed seated and made no move to take the coins. Mother-in-law dug her elbow into her husband's side. She wanted to chide her husband, but she didn't. She made a circling gesture with the fingers of her hand. Father-in-law poured more silver coins into his hand. The seer stood up, but he did not reach out for the coins. Father-in-law and the seer looked at each other. Mother-in-law shook her husband's arm desperately. Without meaning to, father-in-law groaned. He poured more coins into his hand. The seer reached forward to take the coins, the transfer being made. He turned into his lean-to. He fetched a crude leather purse tied to a long string and put the coins in the purse. Then he slung the purse cord over his shoulder crosswise, over his chest. Then he walked past my husband's mother and father, past his donkey, and to the stream. He waded in until the water came part way up his calf. He was about 2 body lengths from the bank. Then and there, midstream, he smiled, looked up, and hoisted his purse to the heavens. Still smiling at his gods, he patted the purse between his hands. His hands made a slapping noise against the side of the purse. He patted it several times, then he let the purse drop to the end of the looped cord. There was a light breeze. When the treetops swayed in the wind, he swayed with the treetops. When the breeze stopped, he stood still. Sometimes a bird chirped. Then he chirped too. This went on for several minutes. Then he seemed to freeze, motionless and with no expression. He seemed oblivious to the sounds and movements in the trees. to the murmur of the stream, to the cold water that ambled past his feet, to the sound of the donkey stripping leaves from the bush, and to the insects in the air, and to the man and the anxious woman who waited and watched. Minutes passed. Then he came to himself. He breathed deeply. He climbed back onto the bank. Coming up to the impassive man and the trembling woman, he smiled. He said, "You will have a son. And know this, he will be greatly feared, and he will fear deeply. He will be a master of many, and he will serve the many. He will slay the cruel, but a cruel man will strike him down." At first, father-in-law said nothing. Then he howled, "We paid you silver!" Mother-in-law took his arm and tried to turn him away. He twisted out of her grasp. "What kind of oracle is that? My son afraid? My son a servant? My son killed by a cruel man? Who paid you to lay such a curse upon us? Who?" All this time, mother-in-law was trying to pull him toward the town, saying, my love," and he was hitting her hands away. Father-in-law reached to grab the seer. The seer slipped nimbly away. He ran to the donkey's side and snatched up the stick that leaned against the bush. With one quick motion he untethered the donkey's reins and leaped upon the beast's back. As he turned his donkey into the stream with a practiced hand, he tilted his purse and with the same hand flung silver coins at my father-in-law's feet. He struck the beast's haunch with the stick. Father-in-law bent to pick up the coins as the donkey's hooves churned through the water. The seer went up the opposite bank and soon disappeared over the hill on the other side. My husband's parents walked home, saying nothing. Soon, father-in-law began to negotiate with his cousin to adopt his cousin's youngest son. But before the bargaining was quite completed, mother-in-law discovered she was pregnant. Within 10 months of their visit to the seer, their son was born. They named their son Pontius because he would grow up by the seaside. Despite his father's vast ambition for him and in defiance of occasional beatings from his teacher, Pontius was at best an average student. He was smart, but he was distracted. Especially, he loved playing sports with his friends. But before he was 10 years old, something happened that changed him. This is the end of chapter 1.